Hello students, today we are going to study about entities and attributes under the subject Database Management System. Before starting with entity and attribute, let us see what is an entity relationship model or ER model. So ER model is a high-level data model which is used to define the data elements and relationships for a given system. Now, notion of real world entities and a relationship among them are depicted in ER models. The main component of ER model are entity, attribute and relationship. Each of these an entity will be represented in a rectangle. Attribute will be represented as oval and relationship will be represented as diamonds. These are the components of ER diagram, that is entity relationship diagram. So what is an entity? An entity is a person, place, object, event or concept about which a data is to be maintained. For example, a car is an entity, a student is an entity. Now you have opened YouTube and you are listening to this video, so you can just look around the room where you are sitting now and try to identify what are the entities. For example, you are at home. What can be the entities which are present around you? You have a chair, a table, a computer, a fan, I assume, okay? So all these are examples of entities. Now coming to the attribute. Attributes are properties or characteristics of an entity. For example, if I am talking about a car, what is the model of that car? What is the color of that car? Etc. If I am talking about a student, what is the student's roll number? What is his or her name? What is the address of the student? Are all its attributes, that is property or characteristics. Though we are focusing our talk today on entities and attributes, let us see what is a relation. A relation is a verb phrase, association between the instances of one or more entity types. For example, a blue car belongs to student Jack. Now coming to the entity details. So entity is a thing in real world with independent existence. As I already mentioned, it is represented by using a rectangle. What are the types of entities? Entities can be tangible and intangible. Tangible entities are those which exist in the real world. For example, which you can touch physically, so they have a physical existence, like person, car, student, etc. Intangible entities are those which exist only logically and they don't have any physical existence and you cannot touch them, like bank account, library account, etc. While talking about an entity type is a collection of entities having similar attributes. For example, we can see a table student here. All the students which are mentioned in this particular table, we have 4 rows, right? Roll number 1, 2, 3 and 4. So all the 4 roll numbers represent or come under the student table, right? So student is a collection having similar attributes. That's why it is like we have put a rectangle and we wrote entity type. What is an entity set? A collection of entities of the same entity type. The entities of the entity set have common attributes for each entity, but the values are different. So all the students have a common attribute roll number, but they all have different values for roll numbers. We can say that entity type is a superset of the entity set, as all the entities are included in the entity type. Now we come to a very strong concept that is called strong entity. So all the strong entities are those which have a primary key. For example, a student has a primary key called student ID or roll number or USN number. So it is a strong entity. Weak entities do not have a primary key and are dependent on the parent entity. For example, in our college database, we have the details about the parents of each student. The parent himself don't have a parent ID or a roll number. He is identified by the roll number of the student. So parent entity here do not have a primary key of its own and are dependent on the parent entity, that is strong entity, right? Here the parent entity is the strong entity, which is the student. These types of entities without a primary key are called weak entities and are represented by or with the help of double rectangle. Coming to the attributes. Attribute, as I already mentioned, is a property of an entity. It is represented with an or by an oval. All the types of all the types of attributes are mentioned here. Let us see them one by one. First, we come to key attributes or simple or atomic attributes. Key attribute can uniquely identify an entity from any entity set. For example, we have roll number of a student. Roll number can uniquely identify any student from the entity set. Attributes cannot be further subdivided. Normally, they can't be further subdivided. Exceptions are there though. Key attribute is represented by oval, same as other attributes also. However, the text of the key attribute is underlined, as you can see in this diagram. Now we have the composite attribute. I was just now talking about the exception, right? Here you can see that address can be again subdivided into PIN, state and country. So it's a combination of other attributes, right? That's why the address is called composite attribute here. Now we come to the multi-valued attributes. A particular student can possess multiple phone numbers. Therefore, student phone is an attribute that can hold multiple values. Hence, it is called multi-valued attribute and is represented with the help of double oval. What about the single valued attribute? It is just the opposite. These types of attributes can take only one value at a time. For example, here one student can have only one age. Now we come to the derived attributes. The derived attributes are represented by using dashed oval. Derived attribute is one whose value is dynamic and is derived from another attribute. So here, age is a derived attribute which is derived from the attribute date of birth. So if I know the date of birth of a student, I can easily guess the age. Now we come to null valued attribute. An entity, a particular attribute might not have any applicable value. For example, a student and student's grade. Suppose the student was absent for a particular exam. What grade will you put now for that particular student? You have to give a value called null. Now we come to complex attribute. Complex attribute is a type of attribute formed by nesting the composite attributes and multi-valued attributes in any arbitrary way. For example, here you can see inside this curly brace, we have a huge big attribute, right? We have the address underscore phone. What is present inside that? We have the phone number and we have the address together. Okay, so this address underscore phone is a complex attribute which has multiple attributes which are, I can say, enveloped inside a single one. So we have the phone number, which is a multi-valued attribute, because I already mentioned the student can possess multiple numbers. And we have address, which is again an attribute which can further be subdivided into house number, street, zip code, city, etc. Hence, it is a composite attribute. Hence, we see that this address underscore phone is formed by nesting both composite attribute and multi-valued attribute. Thank you, students.